News Radio 1290, WNBF and WNBF.com. I'm Bob Joseph on a Tuesday morning, and a pleasure to welcome the new Endicott Police Chief, Patrick Garey, to the studio.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
First of all, congratulations on your new post. This is a new chapter for you. You've been involved in law enforcement for a long time, but now you have the specific challenge of overseeing a village police department at a very challenging time for all police departments of all sizes.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, and it's very exciting for me. I'm enjoying it very much. Probably as excited going to work as I have been in 20 years or so. So I loved being with the New York State Police, but this new challenge is it's definitely different, but it's very exciting.
And you officially started work as the Endicott Police Chief on July 18th.
Correct.
Well, so nothing yet to dissuade you to say, wait, this isn't the way I believed it was going to be. You're still excited and enthusiastic.
Yes. Long days right now. Anywhere from 12 to 14 hours, but enjoying every minute of it.
Let's talk a bit about your life and a little background, how you wound up getting involved in law enforcement. Did you grow up around here?
I did. I grew up in Johnson City.
All right. And at what point were you 8 years old and decided, law enforcement might be where it's at? State police looks interesting. At what point in life did you think law enforcement would be an interesting career?
Well, this we may not have enough time on this show, but after high school, I went to the United States Naval Academy to play football. And while I was there, I was kind of kid in high school who I didn't really have to study. I could pass without studying and get fairly decent grades, 90-ish grades. And because I knew everything in high school, just like all high school students do.
I remember that era when I knew everything I needed to know about everything.
Yes. I didn't really listen very well when they told me at the Naval Academy I was going to have very good study skills and things like that. So I went down there and played football down there. And the lack of study skills caught up to me very quickly. I got behind on my grades, and I ended up injuring my knee, and then my father had pancreatic cancer, so I had this kind of trifecta of bad that occurred. I went in and asked for an emergency leave to go home and see him, and my company commander kind of played a little game with me, trying to, tell me he couldn't let me go because my grades were so bad. And I found out he was just playing a game, but I threw my crutches down and stomped out and ended up leaving the Naval Academy. So I tell everybody this is when I went from a child to a man. I was driving home a week or so later, and I think it's 270 in Frederick, Maryland, bawling my eyes out. Leaving the Naval Academy, realizing
So how old were you at that
17.
point?
17. So actually 18.
Wow.
Yeah. Realizing that I'm giving up something that I really wanted. So I immediately started the process to try to get back into the Naval Academy and start over, basically, which they were accepting of doing. Football had something to do with that. And while I was in the process of that and getting ready for it, I was talking to somebody about the Naval Academy and saying that if I couldn't fly, then after 5 years I would get out of the academy and my service commitment, I would join the FBI. And she was my boss at Court Jester Athletic Club at the time, and she said, well, have you ever thought of the BCI? And I didn't know what the BCI was, and she explained to me it was the state police, investigative arm. And as soon as she did, and I did a little research on it, I fell in love with the idea and immediately changed course. And fortunately, the test to be a trooper was a short time after that. So,
did you have any family members or friends who had been state troopers or part of BCI up to that point?
My Uncle Dick was a Vestal police officer. He was there his whole career, so I did have that influence. And definitely as a young kid, I was interested in his handcuffs and things like that when he would come over. But no real strong, look at it, at policing. I was, interested in things that were going to make me millions of dollars and that sort of thing. And it all just sort of changed all in about a 3 or 4 month period.
So you passed the test. You went through the academy. How was getting through the academy? I take it because of your football background. Sounds like perhaps the physical part probably was not necessarily as arduous as it might be for some recruits.
Well, I mean, it was definitely a challenge, but between, being an athlete and then, I had the plebe summer of the Naval Academy as a great segue into the State Police Academy. So by that time, I sort of understood that it's a big game that's being played, and when they're yelling at you, they don't really dislike you and things like that. So it's a little
bit of psychological preparation to toughen you up, to get you set for what is going to be probably a 20 or 25 year career of challenges out in the real world.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I can remember, my days in the academy, the memories are coming back to the room after being yelled at or being beat up or, doing however many push-ups and running and coming back and just laughing with my roommates over some of the things that were said. And because it's hysterical. I mean, you have a great time, but it does take a certain mindset to understand that, this is a short-lived moment that you have to get through, and it might not be fun, but
everybody goes through it, and after they're through it, they can look back and generally say, yeah, it was tough, and yet it was appropriate to get the men and women ultimately prepared for what they were going to have to face out on the job.
That's absolutely it, and I think it tends to weed out people who can't deal with stressors very well, and I think they quickly realize that this is not really a life for me, that I have to deal with I'm happy sitting around one moment, and then the next moment I'm dealing with stress that's very difficult to keep control of.
Yeah. Well, it has always struck me that a lot of people might be enamored of the idea of getting involved in law enforcement, and then once they find out, yes, you have to be in position to go from 0 to 150 in a matter of a few seconds. But in addition to that, there are other aspects of the job as far as the paperwork and some long hours, and on an 8-hour shift, 7 hours and 57 minutes might be really boring depending on the day. You just never know. But you always have to be in a state of constant preparedness.
That's exactly it. And, some days you're running like crazy, other days you're sitting around. The paperwork end of it is something people don't realize. We're dealing with people's lives. That paperwork has to be accurate. You have to be well-versed in a wide variety of laws. So policing is definitely a challenging profession. And honestly, my job now, although it has its own stressors, and even, in the positions I was in the state police, they have their stressors. But sitting behind a desk and leading people from there, it's definitely not the stressor that those guys are dealing with every day on the street.
Tell me about your years with the Division of State Police. When you got out of the academy, where were you assigned?
Originally, I was in Richfield Springs, which is about 15-20 minutes north of Cooperstown. My field training was done right here in Broome County between the Binghamton and Endwell stations. Then I went to Richfield Springs. So I was there for about a year. My partner in crime here, Jim Barnes, who's the major in Troop C, he and I have, pretty much served almost our entire time together in one way or another. But we were together in Richfield Springs, and then we both got back to the Binghamton station after about a year. We were there for a short time, then went over to the Endwell station. We were troopers there together. And then we made sergeant. He went up to the Marcy area. I ended up going to Watertown. I was there for around a year, came back as the station commander in Oneonta, and then I was there for 6 months or so, and I got into narcotics, and that's really where my love of policing was, and the focus that I looked for was narcotics investigations. So I was there as an investigator for a while, and then made lieutenant, went up to division headquarters for a little while, and then went out and took command of the CNET unit in the Albany area, Capital District, 7 or 8 counties up there, and then eventually worked my way back here. And I was the CNET commander here for right around 15 years.
And that's where you were at the time that you left the state police and ultimately joined?
No, actually, I got promoted to captain from that spot, and I went up and I was the executive officer or the assistant troop commander up in Sydney, working for first Major Don Fawnin, who's now an inspector, and then Major Barnes. And so that's where I left. It's an administrative and executive officer position up in troop headquarters. That's where I left and came to Endicott.
Tell me about the first days of getting acclimated to the village police department. Obviously, there are some similarities with the village police department compared to state police, but there are a lot of differences, too. There are tremendous differences in the organizations. Give me a sense of... And, of course, you were somewhat familiar, having dealt with lots of local law enforcement agencies, but give me a sense of getting acclimated and adjusted going from state police to Endicott police.
So, there's definitely some differences. First of all, I knew from my time within Troop C here, the Endicott Police Department, it's a great group of guys, and they have a great foundation. So, moving over to Endicott and that being the department I was going to really made it an easy decision in terms of I knew I was going to a police department that had a lot of professionalism and, really in ethics and integrity and the important things that are, lay a foundation to a department. So, but in the state police, one of the benefits that we have is while we can make a lot of decisions on the local level, you can't really implement policy. Policy is all done through through Albany and through division headquarters. And so, if you do want to do something, you have to check with the attorneys in Albany, and then sometimes you have to check with the planning and research department, and so on and so forth. And because one decision you can make at a local level can really have statewide effect for the division of state police. And so my biggest change coming to Endicott is looking through some rules and regulations and things like that, and talking to the lieutenants and seeing some things we wanted to change. And so, my question was, well, okay, how do we do that? And their answer was, well, you do that. And, and I said, okay, well, how do I do that? Because I don't even know where to start writing a policy, So they've been very good about, kind of walking me through, how to open this door and where that's located and things like that. So really, that's the biggest challenge right now. The policing end of it is easy. Policing is policing, and I'm most comfortable right now dealing with anything that deals with things out on the street. The internal, going through the daily motions. This morning we had a couple of subpoenas come in, a couple of freedom of information requests, and I have to go to someone else and say, okay, what am I supposed to do with
What's
these?
the process?
So, yeah,
exactly. Well, every day is filled with learning opportunities. As far as in the early days, again, you've been on the job for just over 2 weeks now. Have you implemented any notable policy changes, even minor adjustments in the way overall things are handled by the village police?
Nothing officially at this point. I think that they see just the difference in how maybe I am looking to approach some things versus how they did things before. Some ideas I have that they're coming through probably more by word of mouth right now. I have coming up this week, I'm meeting with many members of the department to just kind of go through some of my bigger ideas and where I would like us to go. And a lot of times that requires sitting down with the union and making sure that they're good with it and things like that. So some change is going to be a slow process, and I don't want to walk in and just start changing things right away. I want to understand what's happening and why things are happening first, and then make change collectively as a group.
Before you arrived as chief, were you familiar with most of the personnel in the Endicott Police Department? I'm sure you were familiar with some, just because of your work with state police over the years and the interaction between the agencies. Did you have to get acquainted with a lot of people? There was, since my time being out in the streets
in Endicott, 10 or so years ago, there has been some turnover. So certainly I did know some of the guys and knew them well. But there are quite a few that I had to meet, and it's been great getting to know them. And if nothing else, they've demonstrated to me very quickly that we have a lot of good police officers there who want to work. They want to work hard, and just good people. So it makes my job easy to know that I'm coming to work with people who are just good people to work with.
How many sworn officers, including yourself, are now part of the Endicott Police?
We're at 29 right now. That includes Craig Williams, he was the interim chief serving before I came in, and he's there during the transition period here right now.
Will that be for much longer?
It's all civil service, which is one of the areas I have to learn a little bit better. But his position is through mid-August. But we are actually doing some things to possibly try to extend that. Again, this is all kind of out of my my wheelhouse here in trying to do this. But Craig's been very valuable, and hopefully we can keep him on. I'm speaking with the village. He would be a great asset to the department.
What seems to be the biggest law enforcement challenge right now in the village?
I think the village of Endicott is viewed as a safe place to do drugs and sell drugs and commit crimes. I don't know that that's really the reality, but I think it is absolutely the perception that's out there. Like I say, the guys I have working for me in the department, they work their rear ends off, and they want to do a good job, and they're handcuffed in some ways right now in the way certain policies are, and how much they're working, things like that. But I think there's a perception down there, and if nothing, business owners almost on a daily basis are telling me that the perception is, customers don't want to come to Endicott, that it's perceived as violent, and it's perceived as almost like a haven to be able to commit crimes. And so that's priority number one, is we are going to aggressively go out and change that. And that's part of what my meeting is this week with the department, is my plan on how I want to do that.
So it sounds as though you're hoping that residents of Endicott, business owners, people who work in Endicott, and other visitors at some point fairly soon will start to see some real changes, or at least perceive that there is, for lack of a new term, a new chief, a new sheriff in town, new police chief, and things are going to be different.
Yeah, I hope just taking, kind of new and fresh approaches, and like I say, I think some of that perception is not true, but I understand what's behind it, and I think just a little bit different and new approach as to how I'm looking at things. There are some models that we've used when I was in CNET that we went out to Elmira, up in Ithaca, out in the Albany area, that it works pretty well in keeping pressure on people who want to commit crimes, and even low-level crimes that make people feel uncomfortable. So, and low-level offenses as well. So, using that model and trying to rework with the guys in the department, the contract, so we can get a little more patrol out there regularly. A couple of little things that I think can make an impact right away. So when I talk to business owners, I tell them just give me a little time before you make any judgments or anything like that. Give me a little time, because I think I have a plan that's going to work really well.
Prior to your arrival earlier this year, when we had Mayor Bertoni on, he mentioned that there was a discussion, a plan that would free up an officer frequently at night when possible, get an officer out of the police station and get him or her out on the street. So the station would not necessarily be staffed on the overnight shift unless somebody was being held in the lockup, or if there were other extenuating circumstances. Is that plan still going to go forward?
Yeah, that's definitely in the mix. I don't I didn't want to implement that right away until I have this discussion and I can work some things out with the union. Because rather than making a bunch of changes that then work against one another, I want it all incorporated into, kind of a single plan here. So that is definitely something I'm looking at. We were looking at, in tracking calls and number of visitors to the station and things like that. And then we've been in some small discussions with Vestal and Johnson City, and as well as, my knowledge of the state police as to how they do it with stations that aren't manned. So we are looking at that, and I would say that's going to be, sooner rather than later. It won't be tomorrow, but I'm hoping that after I meet with the department on Wednesday, I'm hoping that we can, really move forward quickly, and we can get these guys the resources they need out on the streets so they can do their jobs more effectively. And then with that, we'll be freeing up that additional officer who's on the desk.
Endicott Police Chief Patrick Garey, we'll look forward to having you back on the program soon.
Thank you.